Hello everyone, and let's talk about Moonlight over the Loveless Motel. This is an ebook that I read, so you will be seeing an image insert. So, what can I tell you about this one? So this was published by Stephen St. James and was published in 2020. Now, this author, I think this is the pen name for the author. I think the name that other work is under might be the actual name. I'll have to look more into that. But so Stephen St. James is also known as Stephen Womack. So there you go. So Stephen's, for this book, Moonlight Over the Loveless, is S-T-E-P-H-E-N. Other work is under S-T-E-V-E-N. So slightly spelling, but same first name pretty much. So this book takes place, it's told in first person, and it takes place for the first 4 chapters in Boulder, Colorado, and then it takes place in Tennessee. So the majority of the book takes place in Tennessee, a place called Benton Creek. We are following mostly Nate in this. I want to say 98% of the time we're following Nate, who is the main male perspective. There was no audiobook available when I read this book, and it is a standalone. So Nate could not wait to get out of the small town in Tennessee, and he moved to a bigger town in Colorado. He started his own company, ended up making millions upon millions of dollars, had an offer to buy out, and he did everything he could to make sure that everyone who was a shareholder in his company, who invested in his company when it was first trying to start, when he was first trying to start it and get off the ground, that they had excellent compensation packages if they wanted to leave. Basically, the original members of the company would be millionaires as well. And so I would say he's more in the line of billionaire, but anyway, so he's had a lot of money. He's decided to retire, and he's only in his, if I remember right, mid-30s? No, he's 44. He's 44. A little older than me. So, and this is a romance book. So this, I would say the romance scene in this is more towards a fade to black, but it does get a little bit more descriptive as far as what was done. It's not a fade to black, but it's more towards that end of the spice scale compared to very spicy and a lot of the other romance books that I have been reading lately. So this was definitely much more tame, but there is still some explicit scenes in there and explicit language. So Nate has retired, is trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life, gets a call, finds out that one of his friends from back home in Tennessee is dead. Finds out it was by that person's own hand, so it was suicide. So if you do not want to read a book where suicide is brought up a lot, then avoid this book, because it is brought up a lot, and it does get descriptive with the suicide. So he's trying to figure out what to do. His 2 best friends, you do find out right away, his 2 best friends from the small town married each other, and for whatever reason, the female of the 2, so it was a male and female, the female never called him to say that her husband, which was also his other best friend, killed himself. And so he found out by someone else in this small town community that he also grew up knowing. And so he decides to go back to Tennessee to see what he can do. Remembers this motel was a lot fancier, and now it's very much a rundown thing. It is for sale. The wife of the man that killed himself just wants to sell it and move on with her life. So he is there trying to see what he can do. She doesn't want to accept help or help in certain ways, like financially. And so he doesn't want strings attached. There's this whole thing with how she would accept it. And so he's trying to figure out how he can help anonymously or something, like make up some fictitious information. He wants to help her out of a situation because she's not doing well financially, and so he wants to help. He knows she will not accept charity or handouts type of a situation. And they're there. He's trying to, restart this friendship, as far as kind of like rekindle this friendship. And eventually it does start to lead into more of a romance, and it just goes from there. So, I mean, it's your standard romance. I'm not going to say much because the biggest thing in this is dealing with grief and dealing with loss of a loved one. In this case, it is one of his best friends, and suicide is brought up a lot in this book. What are your content and trigger warnings? You have act of suicide, you have suicide attempts, you have divorce talked about, you have loss of parents, grandparents, friends. So you just have a lot of people have passed away, whether by their own hand. There's 2 people in this book that are mentioned that have committed suicide. And you're not, when someone commits suicide in this book, it does make you realize that sometimes you just don't always have an answer. In some cases, their lung cancer is mentioned in this, and how painful that can be, where sometimes it's like you just want to end it on your terms, your life on your terms, and so people will commit suicide when they're that sick. So sometimes there is a reason and sometimes there is not. So, but yes, suicide is definitely described. So those are your content and your trigger warnings. Again, there is an explicit sex scene, but it is more on the tame side compared to a lot of other books. But it is there. This was a shorter read. It was only 145 pages with the ebook version that I read. And so again, it's a romance, the friendship rekindling leading to romance. So it's a friends to lovers trope. And I would say the biggest plot point in this is, one, following the romance blossom and bloom and all of that, but also just coming to terms with grief. That is your biggest thing in this. That is what the book is about. Okay. Okay, so now that we know what it's about and what the content and trigger warnings are, what about the representation? That's going to be up to you in your imagination. If I remember right, I think someone was mentioned having some darker or some tan skin, but it was only brought up like once and very, very briefly. So outside of whatever representation, like everyone in the story could be German. Although it takes place in Tennessee, but maybe everyone's German. Who knows? Maybe everyone's from Africa. Maybe everyone's from Australia. Maybe everyone's Native American. You never know. Despite the state that they're in, you know, you could just have a mixture, or everyone being the same nationality or race. It's just not brought up. And so it's going to be up to your imagination and how you picture these people in your head, if you picture them at all. So now that we know there's no obvious mention of representation, and we know what the content and trigger warnings are, let's get into the words in case you're still on the fence with this book. If you're like, I can handle a bit of talk of suicide, but what are the words that are used? Well, let's tell you. We have nipple twice, hick twice, bitch once, bullshit twice, hell 41, the name Jesus 8, not in a religious sense, the word God 22, usually not in a religious sense. I think a couple of times it was religious, but usually not. Breasts 3, damn it 12, spaz 3. I don't like that word because of how it was used when I was growing up. I don't like it, but it is in the book. The word laid, as far as a sexual use, as a sexual use, 3 times. Virgin 3, douchebag once, orgasm once, asshole once, smartass 3, damn 13, ass 5, shit twice, son of a bitch once, fuck 4, piss 1, and I'm trying to remember. Now, when I say, in this case, piss, it's not always as far as urinating. Sometimes it's, like, this is a word I have heard that some people really don't like, and that's why I include it in these, because this could be like, I'm pissed off. It's a pissing match. It's, you know, there's other uses, and people just don't like the core word piss, and so I include it in these. So, one time. Bastard 3, arouse 3. Key thing with this is arouse, like the word piss. Sometimes these words I just go with the core word, but it could be, in this case, aroused, arousing, arousal, or arouse. So there's slight variations with some of these words, but I just include the very base word, unless something like, now this word is not in the book, but for example, slut, I would count that as well as slutty. So I count those as two separate because I see those as two completely different meanings. So not past and present and current tense and action and all of that. So, but that word is not in here. Moving on from arouse, we have grind once, grating once, came once, C-A-M-E. The word Lord twice, not in a religious sense. The word molest once. And then the phrase goddamn twice and goddammit once. So those are the words in there. Not overly explicit, but there is a bit of explicit language in there. And again, the sex scene there is at this place, you know, she sleeps in her bed, he sleeps on the couch. At one point they do end up together, and it does describe a little bit, but again, it's not overly erotic. It definitely would not fall into that category, but it does describe a couple of things. Definitely would be, if this were given a movie rating, I would say, I don't even want to say it would be PG-13 because of some of the words and the sex scene, maybe like a TVMA, like a, you know, TV for mature audiences only. That type of a rating definitely would need to be on the more mature end of this, but definitely not one that I would say would be a hardcore 18 or older type of a situation. So that's my feeling about that. That is what the book was about. Let me know. Have you read Moonlight over the Loveless Motel by Stephen St. James, or have you read any of the works written under Stephen Womack? Again, same person, just different names. Is this a book that you would be interested in? Well, let me know. Talk to me in the comment section below. And until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I will talk to you later.